Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last episode of the CMA panel, America's edition, for the year of 2024. We've got an expanded panel, so some more panelists and one new panelist, Himanshu Kumar. We're going to be talking about the CSM or Customer Service Management module today. So I'll just do a quick round table. We'll do some quick introductions. My name is Chris Shu, and I've worked with the CSM module for a few years now. Taken the course a couple years ago, never took the test. Now I have to retake the course. So that's kind of my experience with that module in terms of ServiceNow. So let's go over to Abhishek next, and we'll just go in the Brady Bunch order I've got on my screen here.
Hey everyone, my name is Abhishek Srivastava, and I've been implementing CSM for the last 4 to 5 years. Recently joined a new organization which has a very specific domain expertise in the financial space. So using more of FSO these days because FSO is extending the CSM module. I am certified in the customer service management and happy to answer any questions we have for today.
Great. Okay, and next over, Greg Mest.
Yes, hi, Greg Mest. Been with in the ServiceNow ecosystem since 2010 and been working with CSM since about 2017. Kind of running the gamut of experiences from a pure retail operation who needed to help their actual customers, who walk into a store and buy something, all the way to the technical MSP space where there's very tight alignment with ITSM and CMDB and those sorts of things. So that's my background for today's call.
Excellent. And Chris New.
Yes, Chris New. I'm currently working with New Rocket. My CSM background, so I'm certified in CSM, worked with the product quite a while. Prior to being at New Rocket, I was with ServiceNow for 7 years, so I worked extensively with quite a few of the people there product-wise that you may know that handle this product pretty heavily. I am currently on several implementations where CSM is a heavy hitter. Anybody who's not working with CSM with a customer right about now is probably crazy because it seems to be the highlight product right now. So looking forward to helping out, answering any questions or providing any guidance that I can bring to this call. This is my, third or fourth panel to be a part of. And so I enjoy it and ready to be a part of this one as well.
Excellent. Thanks. Rob Greeley.
Yeah, hi. And as some of you guys know from some of the previous podcasts here, I play a little bit of a different role. I've been within ServiceNow for the ecosystem for about 10 years, but spent a lot of that time on the customer side versus on the implementer side. I've been back in both, been forth in both. And from a CSM perspective, I'd say I can represent the CSM customers right here. So about a year ago, we implemented CSM for the company that I run operations for an EV charging company. And we've implemented CSM for our call center and are using it to handle inbound calls for the drivers who are having trouble having trouble charging.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, and Himanshu Kumar, the newest addition to the CMA panel. This is his first episode, so just a brief introduction about yourself and some of your CSM experience. Oh, yeah, see, we're having audio issues with you, Himanshu. You have two devices. I think we needed to. Let's see. Try now.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can now. Okay.
Okay. So, Himanshu Kumar, right now I am working at Kyndryl, leading basically the pre-sales, but I have spent last 7-8 years being an architect around the platform. CSM was majority of the area. During that, was working with a couple of technology providers, service providers in a domain separated instance. And now kind of working with majority of those customers to move from CSM to go those industry workflow, whether it is telecom or the financial service operations. So yeah, that's my background, a lot of experience and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so feel free to post a question in the chat and we will get to them in that order. So, hold on. I see the chat already. Oh, we've got some good mornings. So thank you. Hi, Joe, for saying good morning. So Let us know if you've got any specific questions. But Greg, you've worked with this product probably the longest out of all of us. So, oh, he makes the humble face. And, so, how have you seen it evolve over the years? Because this is something that I've always struggled with. How do I plan for the future? How do I not build stuff that's coming later? Or how do I at least determine, all right, I need to build it now and then align to baseline when it becomes available in the baseline?
Yeah, boy, that's a question that applies to the entire platform,
I was
doesn't
going
it?
to say, what module does it not apply to?
Yeah,
If you don't mind, I want to take just a slight step backwards and just talk about
sure.
like what really is CSM fundamentally, or what is the biggest, I guess, change if you're going to implement CSM. And so CSM, the primary thing it does is it takes your instance, which was designed to be exposed to your employees and your internal organization, and makes it exposed to the entire world. That is the biggest thing, and in doing so, it re-ACLs the entire system to where you now have a segregation of, is this an internal person or is this an external customer? So that's the fundamental like platform change you get when you turn on CSM. And so the use cases hopefully are fairly obvious, right? It's you need to have folks from anywhere in the world be able to log into typically your portal, and raise what becomes a case. I mean, you can call it a ticket. It's very similar to an incident in the ITSM space. But really, the main thing is that segregation. The other main thing is from a data model perspective. Um, it takes fundamental core tables like sys user and what is it, core company, and extends them for customer situations. So sys user becomes a subtable called customer contact. Core company becomes a subtable called customer account. And then within that data realm, there's a model that is very similar to domain separation in that there are lots of rules in place that say customer A can't see anything to do with customer B. They can't see their users. They can't see the accounts, that sort of thing. And then there's data that establishes relationships if you need them. So that's the main thing. In terms of evolution, it's like a lot of ServiceNow products. Version 1 was an absolute baseline. It was a new kind of ticket called a case. The main thing was that everything I've talked about to date in terms of how it affected the platform. And over time, you see a lot of the new features coming into place, like presence and chat and handling notes and all the things you might see if you go to another super evolved kind of customer service management system. And then finally, just in terms of planning for the future, I think that's like anything, right? You do your best to kind of understand the roadmap. You do your best to understand the customer requirements, and you have to make informed decisions of, is this something I want to try to build now, or is it, do I want to guide the customer to maybe adopt their processes to the out of the box experience? It's a very generic answer. I don't know how, I'm trying to think of specific examples within the CSM space, but I mean, those axioms kind of apply to any time you're deciding whether to build or not within the platform.
Right. No, that's a great way to frame it and to get us going. And we've already got a question, so I'll just read it out. So we have a LinkedIn user, Varshith, I believe. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Would like to learn more about the service model. I know it says modal, but it's service model foundation. So they're in the franchisee business, and they want to implement it for both corporate and franchisee salons. So do we have anybody that want to take a stab at that right away?
Yep, I can go ahead.
Sure.
So the service model foundation, it provides you a clear structure to understand the relationships between your customers, your services provided by your franchisee, and the infrastructure you support. It will deliver consistent, personalized support aligned with your customers' expectations. Once they raise the tickets, how are they expecting a response from you? Um, it will automate your repetitive tasks, reducing your manual efforts and errors. Sometimes there are issues where underlying services or infrastructure for faster resolution is needed. It will give you that. And then it also provides you to adapt with growing business needs by expanding and refining your service models. And I'm assuming you already have those service models implemented in the system. So it will standardize your customer service workflows to improve the efficiency and the resolution times of your tickets which are there, kind of like tracking and resolving customer issues, providing self-service options via a knowledge base, and addressing various disruptions quickly and in a self-service manner. So those are the things which are associated with the service model foundation.
And how would you begin to implement it or even start planning to implement this?
So what I've seen is first we have to have a service portfolio aligned, which will represent the complete set of services offered to a customer. Um, some of the key elements what I've seen is a user friendly service catalog of services which are available for customer selections, kind of like um, the product models which define the structure of your services or products that are being offered. um, then you have to maintain your customer and account relationships, which is like managing and linking your customer accounts, contacts, and their interactions with various services what are in your catalog. So sometimes the customer accounts represent your organizations, or sometimes even the individual who are purchasing those services. Then we have contacts, entitlements, and finally, the major part of it is the case management, which will provide a uh, unified system to manage customer interactions and issues. And there are a lot of features for case management. It will give you a parent-child relationships for complex cases. You have SLA tracking, and the most important, which everyone needs today, is the omni-channel integration, which is email, chat, phone, and then ServiceNow has recently included the Now Assist for CSM. So combining it with those Gen AI things we have in the market today.
That's great. Thank you. So if you have a follow-up question or a new question, feel free to post it in the chat. But thank you so much for asking that. And I hope that we helped push you into the right direction or into better direction than you're at right now. Let's step back and look more from a customer perspective. So, Rob, you said you just recently implemented this CSM
Yep.
module for managing cases related to people having difficulties with charging their vehicles. So, can you kind of outline some of the high level goals or objectives you were looking to achieve, and then also discuss how are you measuring your success?
Well, I mean, the primary goal here was, frankly, to be able to support drivers. I mean, that's our fundamental to our entire business, right? If a driver can't drive up, plug their car in and charge, then we don't make any money, right? So it's just, it is the fundamental thing that we do. And, therefore, being able to support them was primary. First and foremost, there is telephone. So we need just when someone's driving around, it's raining, it's cold, they can't call. They really just need to be able to call somebody. They don't want to mess around with reading articles about how possibly you should fix it. In fact, before they even do any research, they'll just leave and go someplace else. So just our main thing was to have that user friendly, in your face call, call center that somebody could call. To do that, then we had to be able to enable our agents. So if we wanted to make sure we didn't have a helpless desk or somebody that said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't." And part of the big challenge there for us was that it's not difficulty with the charging process itself. Most of the issues tend to come in with all the variations. People come in with any number of models of cars, and a lot of those issues are specific to the car or caused by the car, or any number of different ways they want to pay, and a lot of those issues can be caused by that. So the biggest thing we had to struggle with before was not necessarily the service design or any of those complexities. It was really trying to design what is the types of issues somebody's going to call with, and what's the knowledge base that we had to build out in behind the scenes to allow an agent to be able to answer all of these questions, not relying on their own specific knowledge. Hey, I finished charging and my car is locked. I can't get the cable out of the car. Well, that's a car specific problem. So now you've got to have that agent be able to go, oh, well, let me go research what kind of car you're driving. BMW I-Series. Okay, well, that, here's the process for unlocking your car and that particular thing. So our first and foremost was really building out that knowledge base. And then there were two other pieces to that. Those agents needed to be able to reach out to our technical backend, because sometimes you need more technical help and you need it quickly. So we had to do a very strong integration between the cases and the incidents, and then actually cases into teams, so that someone, simultaneously while they're working on on solving that case, they could be tied into the back end team, open up a case and ping somebody in the back end to get someone to help them out on that in second. And then we had to implement some custom integrations to our back end systems itself to drive. Similar to the way you can do automatic resolution of incidents, we were trying to help do some automatic resolutions of, automatically restart the charger, automatically do some tweaking to the charger to, from within ServiceNow. Again, so that agent could stay within ServiceNow, keep working the case, and then and move it out. Beyond phone, we then went on to they call it multimodal, looking at emails. And we can talk a little bit about email integration, but there's an interesting challenge there as well.
Well, it sounds like you're really addressing the issue of connectivity from customer to agent, which then kind of puts you in my opinion, a unique situation, because everyone seems to be focused on call deflection, and you're actually trying to get the call and not even deflect it. So that's a unique use case for me, at least, right there. And then you brought up some integration stuff. So I was hoping maybe Chris New could discuss some of the CSM-based integrations he's worked on, and then we'll get over to you, Himanshu.
Oh man, integrations we have worked on. I mean, where do you start? Like
the most exciting one.
Well, before I go into there, because I definitely want to hit there, because I guess integrations is something I'm known for. But I wanted to circle back to something that was talked about earlier, which is the use case of CSM as pertains to similarities to domain separation. The reason I want to circle back there is y'all know very well that my background is domain separation. One of the things I've run across so much in my experience is the misconception that CSM can replace or do what domain separation does. Many times I've seen people say, hey, oh, you need to create multiple processes. You need to do this for that. Oh, just use CSM and it'll create that because it separates your customers and it keeps I'm like, yes, it does. And I agree with you. But are you trying to separate on an instance as a whole, or are you trying to separate within your customer service area? And so I think that's a good call out to circle back to and talk about. And that the reason I wanted to bring it up is I want to clear up that misconception that CSM is another instant segmentation model, because it's not an instant specific, it's a customer specific within CSM with your case types and your other scenarios like that. So domain separation provides you an additional value where and I've actually gone through implementations where it wasn't just CSM, it was domain separation and CSM on the same instance, because they needed their incident problem and change process to also be separated. So just making sure to clear that point out. Now, circling back, because the original question was integrations. What have we integrated with? What have we not integrated with? To be honest, I would actually reverse that and say, what have we not integrated with? The number of integrations that have come our way of products that, hey, we use this for our current CSM, we're doing this. And the question of can we is typically where you start with the integration. Can we do that in ServiceNow? Can we do it in both? can we move all of our information from this one system where we're managing it to ServiceNow? And the answer is always the same. It is yes, we can. It depends on what you're looking to achieve. Those systems that are out there, and to be honest, I'm coming up with names in my head, and they're all circling through. But there's many systems that do something similar, and there's many processes that have to go through when you're looking at an integration. Do you want your process to live in ServiceNow? Do you need your process to live somewhere else? And based on what those answers are, can help achieve what you want to do. Do you even need an integration? That's really where we come down to a lot of times is, yes, there are integration capabilities, but do you really need that second, third product to be doing something similar than what you already are? And most of the time it comes down to like a temporary basis. I need this integration in place while we transition off of our old tool to ServiceNow. So it's almost, apologize, it's almost like you're building a mechanism to allow the transfer to work while you're working. So, and anybody who's worked with integrations in ServiceNow know they know that the capabilities within there are limitless. I want to say, I think it was Rob, I think it was you talking, or it might have been Greg. One of y'all were talking about the fact that there's email integration, there's file integration, there's REST, SOAP. So you've got so many capabilities that can allow that to work. That's why I always lean on when somebody says, well, I don't know if we could actually connect this tool to ServiceNow. I say, well, what are its capabilities? Does it have REST? Does it have SOAP? If it doesn't have those, can you export a file from that system? Can you email me from that system? We can make it work. It's really one of those where you don't want to limit yourself and say, oh, well, we can't do it because we don't have REST. No, just because we don't have REST, an integration consists of more than just a REST API call between two systems. So I always like to get that out there for customers. And just because we're not using REST doesn't mean it's not automated. I can automate an email integration. I can automate a file integration. Hey, dump my file to a mid server and I'll go pull it on a regular scheduled basis and still make that work. So anything can be automated and anything can be made to work in a way that works for you. I don't care if your system is 50 years old and you're still putting in binary keys to make it work. We can go make that work. It's just where the capability aligns that, do I need that or do I not need that?
That's great. And we've got a new question that came in. So Himanshu, do you want to take a stab at this one about operating in an asset light model? So most of their products are most of their products or their install base is owned by a third party company, and their franchisees will receive support directly from that third party company. So how can you use customer service management when most of that support comes from an external party?
Yeah. I'll take that up, and then I let others in the panel
Sure.
chime in. So this is a typical use case, especially when we talk about the customer service management. There are a lot of third parties who are going to provide those services, and they all are contractually aligned with those entitlements, right? Their SLAs. So how we define their SLAs and the contractual agreements, what they have, based on the let's say the countries, the time zone and everything. So we can get those configured alongside the cases, right? And as we are talking about the assets, so usually majority of those cases are going to be, let's say, break fix, right? How the third party is coming in and helping to replace the devices, providing those repair services. So the SLA piece, that is going to be critical, configured on ServiceNow. And along with that, as you called out, the contracts, the model, the entitlement, they all can be configured within the platform for each of those third parties. Let's call it accounts, based on the contacts and all those configuration, the foundation, what we have available, along with the CSM on the platform. I'll keep it short. We'll let others chime in, but that's where, how we can use and leverage CSM.
Well, and also I was going to chime in there. It also depends on what capability you're trying to give. Like the CSM model is so role based. There's so many roles that you can grant somebody coming into that. What are they trying to achieve? Who do you want to have work on this? Maybe it's a task off of a case. So you have to look at it from an overall picture of the initial case comes in. Who has to touch that? What is their role what is their capability that I'm granting them? And that's what I think the primary success of case management, customer success management is, which is I do have third-party companies that do have to operate within my system to support some of those customers that are out there. So what role am I giving them? Are they a vendor in my system that are then providing vendor support? So, and then one of the things I was going to bring, Abhilash, I think it's you, who talked about FSO and how you're working in there. So then you go into the financial side of purchasing, which can connect into your customer success area as well. Hey, I connected with this vendor. The vendor now has to provide me something. We pay the vendor, they support. So I was going to pass it to you because I think you could have an interesting perspective having worked with some of the FSO capabilities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when somebody like our LinkedIn user have said that you're working in an asset light model where third party companies own most of the products. So here are some of the strategies what I have implemented. And Chris knew I'll come to the FSO thing. But firstly, you need to have a centralized customer data model. You need to use ServiceNow CSM to centralize all of your customer data, including your interactions with third-party support. And then you need to ensure that you have a comprehensive view of all the issues and resolutions, even if they are not provided by third parties. Then a common problem, what I've seen with most of the CSM implementations is integration of CSM with third party, specifically the ERPs. So with that, you need to make sure that the third party supports your integrations, which are with the ERPs. And these ERP integrations are sometimes very complex. I've seen organizations talking about their integration strategy that, okay, we do not want to go the integration hub route. Uh, we do not want to do the APIs route. But then we need to get in, they have an organizational mandate to use a middleware there. So you need to bring in some new tools like Kafka or the other middlewares into the system. So you need to make sure of that. Then uh, I've also seen about proactive monitoring and alerts, which we will need to implement with monitoring tools to track the performance and reliability of those third parties we are seeing. We need to set up those alerts and potential issues so that you can see and those franchises on those. And then knowledge management also need to be very robust. You need to have a knowledge management that has maybe the articles which even the third parties are aware of. They need to be very specific to your organization. So these are some of the strategies what I have seen in the third party model.
That's a lot of. Oh, great. Go ahead. And then I got a question for you after that.
For me, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So just this, not surprisingly, what was posted for me begs like 3 or 4 other questions. So, for example, does the customer, are they used to dealing directly with the third party? Is that the experience that you want to continue, or do you want to be ServiceNow, be the single pane of glass for the support you're getting? So those are the kind of questions that have to be answered. And to the other, Abhishek and Chris, where's the data going to live? I mean, it sounds like you may not have information about the actual assets. Do you have information about the product models at a higher level, where you could say, okay, if the issue is against this product model, who then is providing the support? Is the person providing the support going to have access to your ServiceNow system? Chris, you alluded to that. Those are all questions that would have to be answered. What I have certainly seen and done in the past with situations like this, I'll call it in a idealized or most mature state, is when needed, we integrate the customer service cases with the third party who's doing the work and do an e-bond between. So the customer only has to go to ServiceNow to understand what's going on, but the people who are doing the support can work in whatever system they need to work in, and the customer gets the information they need. So, a lot of questions to be answered before a decision could be made as to what the right solution is for this situation.
Yeah, and Chris, I know
Go
you
ahead.
had a question for Greg, but I wanted to circle through what you just said, Greg, and that was the EBON connection between two systems. And one of the things that I believe it was you, Ablesh, that you were talking about was Kafka and other intermediaries. So ESB buses, like one of my customers right now, they utilize Fivetran. I've seen others use many other systems, but one thing to think of with an EBON, especially around a customer service management area, is sometimes the load, the data, the processing that has to take place. So sometimes those tools, those enterprise service buses that are there, Fivetran, Kafka, no matter what it is, those come into play big on those type of integrations, is to kind of take some load off of ServiceNow or monitor it when you first set up and make sure you're not overloading the system. That's what I wanted to bring up. And back over to you, Chris.
Thanks. No, those are all great points. So I kind of was looking at that asset light situation because I'm facing this challenge with a customer of mine where they actually want to start logging incidents against what they call generic CIs. I have yet to uncover if I think that there's, if that's the right path. But in this question, as it's been posed, they're an asset light model and they don't have access to a lot of these assets. And like you said, Greg, about the product model piece, would you consider having a generic asset for that product model, or maybe even an asset against a specific company account or customer account, so that you can then unlock some of the reporting capabilities against all my cases, and I can slice and dice them by at least, like Rob had, the type of car. I could have the model. I've had these many cases against one brand of car, and then you can even slice it down to the model and the year and all of those different properties.
Yeah, I certainly think that's a viable model, particularly if you are not on your roadmap going to get asset. When I say asset, I mean an actual like physical or virtual device with a serial number, much like a CI. There's kind of a one-to-one relationship, right? Asset to CI. In the customer service world, assets are really CIs of the ITSM world. And so if you're not, then yeah, you're going to want to understand, okay, well, at the very least, I understand that this customer is getting support on this particular, I'll just call it model for lack of a better term. And so you may need to tweak a little bit, what fields are required, what kind of dot walks you might be doing at the case level. But yeah, to your point, you're going to want some information around the asset, even if it's at what model was purchased, so that you can report and understand, what are you providing service on? What are the top models that are needing service? Those kinds of things. The last thing I'll say on this is that the other thing about not having specific assets is, again, on a maturity model level, higher level, ServiceNow, you can do things like tie contracts to assets and say, okay, you have support for 100 of these things, and you're asking for support on your 103rd thing. So what's the course of action? So that's that. Again, if you're not going to have the assets in there, you can't necessarily use that higher level maturity in the CSM module.
Yeah, and then that's across the whole platform as well. So that's a great point. What happens when something in CSM kind of spills over into another area, like contracts, like SLAs, which brings me to the next open question. How do you strategically and effectively implement SLAs when there's a complex contract structure? And go ahead, anybody that's brave.
I'd say that's part of anything. The definition, the key here is actually the business definition. What CSM is doing is essentially reducing a complex business to a set of structured, data model and set of structured rules. And the first thing is obviously to understand the business. I mean, we talked very, very beginning, talked about like the service model, and that's, absolutely the hardest thing I found in these implementations is trying to get the business to actually define what their services are and how they're modeled and how they're structured. Right? And and until you can get to that point. Same thing with the the relationships. So you have to really understand that service model, or however it is, and then you really have to understand the contracts, and then that delicate walk from going to, got it, I understand the business relationship. Now, how do we model that in a set of SLAs is it's tricky. I mean, I think that's where the combination of the business analysts, the key, call it business architect role, it ends up coming into play.
Yeah, and I also think it comes down to, and it kind of circles back to that whole integration thing, is that there's lots of capabilities on this tool. So you might have the most complex contract out there, the most complex set of requirements that you're going to be aligning to, but SLAs are pretty robust as well, and the ability to align to crazy requirements is out there. I mean, it's really how far down the road we want to go with it. I've actually seen even requirements around archiving in the tool become really crazy, where you're like, golly, those archive requirements, man, I can't believe you've got that. But it really comes down to what you want to do in the tool and how much overhead you want to put on the tool. I also wanted to circle back one thing, Chris. I always do this. I don't know why I do this, but it's like my thing is circling back. But one of the things you had talked about when you went to the question for Greg was you talked about having an overarching, or what you quote unquote called a generic type category. And one of the things I was going to give you Chris's 2 cents of stuff I've heard and stuff I've dealt with in the past is I hate the terminologies. Let me add you a generic or a high level type scenario. The reason being is, and any of you who've been working with this tool, you're going to back me on this, is anytime you add something that's considered generic or considered this is just to cover all the bases outside of the normal, I'll even use categories as there's all these categories. I'm going to give you an other. That way we can capture stuff that maybe doesn't fall into those. Anytime you give that capability to a user or a user base, that category is going to get overused. It's going to get over abused, and then it's going to make your reporting not look the way it should be. And so it's horrible. So I like where you were going with your conversation, Chris, but I hate the word generic anytime I deal with those situations, because I'm like, now you're
there's a big difference between generic and other.
Yes.
Other as a category.
Yes.
I always say it's evil. I mean, it is
awful.
Everybody wants it. It's awful. The unintended consequences of putting that in there are terrible, right? But,
yes.
I'll spin the other one a little bit for you guys. So I've had success where you do have other, but then I have a KPI tied to reducing the number of others.
Yeah.
So that the catch-all is. And I just want to go back, and I'll circle back on you, Chris New, and say that, we were talking about a generic CI. So they've got like 60 of these generic things that they don't have a CI, they don't have an asset just yet, or it can't be found. So they were kind of looking to throw it into that bucket. And that does seem like an other, now that I'm
generic CIs. I mean, the example that I've used in the past is for example, in ITSM, just to take it out of this world for a minute, putting things like Microsoft Word in as a CI, right? It's, people aren't calling to ask about the exact one they're talking about. They're opening up an incident and saying, I can't get Word to do X, right? They want help. And you don't really care about the specific instance of Word that's installed on their laptop. It's the generic concept.
That's true. And that's kind of where I look for SAM to kick in, and they call in and they log that incident against a business application. And then I look up their laptop, and laptop looks up the asset, which looks up the installed software. Walk.
Yeah, but if you're not there yet.
Yes, right?
Well, and even better is the use case and I've seen this use case before, which is a customer that they purchase assets, and before they get them scanned into their system, they want it to show up in ServiceNow. So I haven't officially tagged this with an asset tag. I haven't officially made this an asset but I need it to show up in some way. So they create generic placeholders for equipment and then roll those in as they get them scanned in. But there's still a placeholder in there before it's ever even part of their system.
Yeah, that's a different answer.
Go ahead, Rob.
Different.
That was an asset management piece, and I kind of worked on something like that years ago, where they had a stock room and they would receive it. It wouldn't be tagged with an asset tag number, but it sat there, and they wanted to track that. So what they did was just put the name as the serial number, and we had a special flag for it. And then when they scanned it, it would, generate everything automatically from there. But that was
the reality in this space is a lot of these situations, it's not like an ITSM discussion. You can't go, if someone's selling mufflers, you can't go discover mufflers. At least I don't think. I don't know about the Internet of Things. Maybe maybe that's coming.
Shout out to my dad who had a Minute Muffler shop in Kamloops. So
yeah. But if you are going to provide support on mufflers, then to your point, Chris, you're going to want to have something in the system where you can say this person is asking for support on mufflers and this kind of muffler. So at the very least, you can start reporting and understanding things at that level, even if you're not going to be able to know the individual muffler that's getting support.
Yeah, Greg, I'm going to need you to go patent mufflers connected to Wi-Fi so that you can make sure that you have credit for that, because everybody on here just was like, man, that's a good idea.
I don't know why that
IoT of car parts. I think you'd want the catalytic converters, because aren't those the things?
Yes. And then you can adjust the sound on there.
Right. I'll do a catalytic converter, and then we'll put Apple AirTags on it so that you can go track it down when someone takes it.
Oh,
okay, let's get back onto the CSM side of things. So, has anybody got anything that's exciting that they're looking at working on in 2025 related to CSM?
So, I'm working with one of my customer who wants to implement their procurement organization. They want to get it into ServiceNow. But with the kind of licensing ServiceNow has for SPO, my customer, who is very intelligent, they have a big team of architects with them. They want us to repurpose CSM and use it for their procurement activities. So I just met with them yesterday, and we were talking about it, and they said, hey, why don't you think about doing this sourcing and case management in customer service management? I said, yeah, we can, but think about the technical debt you'll be creating there. So want to maybe I'll throw it out there because I have never done this. And this is a unique idea that came in from a customer with in-house experts, that we want to repurpose customer service management for all the sourcing and procurement activities. What do you all think about that? Any feedback on that?
It's back to a process question, right? It's what is the process they're trying to bring in, right? If it's tracking purchase orders and automating DocuSign, probably not. But if it's basically receiving calls from users and they want to treat a user, calling into the procurement organization, then yeah, possibly. How close does it fit to the actual process? Always start with the process, and then does that process map to something that CSM supports?
Yep, they do a lot of account payables, source to pay, and then sell to cash, all of those sourcing activities in which we connect. But so that's what I am being asked by a customer.
Mm-hmm.
So just sharing that with you.
That's super interesting. Also, when we're looking at the security aspects of it, that's another consideration that I always find. And that's why I don't like to hear CSM is called Domain Sep Lite, because it is not, right? But it does offer some security around locking that data out. But one of the use cases that I came across where we were unable to leverage a different module outside of CSM was because they did have to lock things down, and we couldn't put it in Service Catalog because I was not willing to put in the effort it took to add HRSD level lockdown in ITIL land, because the amount of technical debt around that would have been, crazy. And they weren't willing to say, okay, well, we'll commit to managing it was like 400 ACL updates we would have to do or something. It was just nuts. Like, you're not willing to manage that technical debt every upgrade cycle. What happens if there's a patch? What happens if there's, a security vulnerability where ServiceNow comes in and updates everything immediately for you, which is sometimes the best case. So that's definitely another consideration.
Chris, I just actually came up with a an awesome, well, let me say not awesome because it was actually horrible when it happened, but a unique use case that I'd love. And Greg, you're probably going to get the best kick out of this because you talked about this during your initial conversation. So I actually had a situation with a customer where we went through a development process with them in their dev instance. Everything was good. We went to their test instance. Everything was good. And by the way, this was all not customer service management. So I'm just going to clarify that before I get there. So we went and promoted this to prod, and during our go live, bam, nothing works. It worked perfect in dev, perfect in test, and we get to prod, nothing. And we're trying to figure it out. And when we dive into it with ServiceNow, it come to find out a plugin had been activated inside of their production instance, not in any other instance, that added SNC internal, SNC external. And it completely hosed our entire process because we weren't accounting for those two roles being there. So to tell you the process to go through and fix this, it was absolutely horrendous because then SNC internal got deleted in prod and everything stopped working in prod. So we had to recreate that. So I'm just giving you a huge scenario there. So we to go through and get that corrected. But it circles back to my whole point of this, which is understanding your instances and when you're starting a dev process to make sure everything is aligned. And it's where I went back to when I got into that project, which is we need to start from the beginning, starting with is there anything different between these instances? And if there is, why are we not starting with a clone to kick things off to get going? Because it would have saved a lunch there. But I thought you'd get a kick out of that, Greg, because you brought up the SNC internal and external and the fact that turning on that plugin really alters and changes your entire instance.
No, that's great. I'm glad you brought it up. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
As to say, you can also just put that under ServiceNow gives you enough rope to hang yourself every time.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing, watch out.
And one of the things that I found adds a ton of value is that fourth sandbox instance that I can clone anytime, I can upgrade anytime. It's just sitting there to cover that thing. And we're getting a lot of extra leverage out of this with a couple customers. And while they may use it for 3 to 6 months out of the year, they're getting way more value out of that because they're not interrupting dev cycles. They can, clone something down and flip a switch, turn that on and see what happens in prod without, breaking everything. And all you need to do is that one time to make it worth it, in my opinion, especially if you've got a larger team. The 2 days worth of dev being unavailable because I have to clean things up or restore from a backup can cost more than that instance would for a year.
Yeah,
we do have a question. Go ahead. Sorry, and then we'll do the question.
Okay, no, I have also seen along with the sandbox, there's a regression instance similar to production, always available and close to production. Nobody do any testing until one final time before move to prod. And the actual QA happens there, not the ServiceNow QA, So having the 4 instance plus sandbox, that's the ideal picture if there's a large, enterprise, and how they go through all those processes aligned with their enterprise QA, considering before moving to prod, following the release cycle. I let the question, go to the question first.
Sure. Yeah. So Joe asks from LinkedIn, is the procurement service management product cost prohibited for your customer? And I believe that's to Abhishek, but just before we frame it that way. So there's a couple things to address. Sometimes the product cost is just beyond the budget. So, I would love to get into a Ferrari and go get groceries, but that just doesn't make sense. And guess what? Even if I had the money to do that, which I don't, then I can't automatically just go get it. So the next question is the value generated from the product does that outweigh the cost to implement, maintain, and all of those pieces? And sometimes that's the second part of the discussion. So I've been with some customers and we just don't have it in the budget this year. You could say you spend $10,000 and I'll save you $1 million. But if they just don't have the 10 grand, then they just don't have it. So right. Abhishek, yeah.
And also, so firstly, we'll have to take a look at the roadmap, what kind of roadmap the customer has on the procurement service management. And like I like I discussed with them, they have a good roadmap on procurement service management. Uh, but at the same time, their procurement operations is way mature than some of the other clients in the market. So what they want to do is they want to get all their processes on the ServiceNow system. But again, they are also very heavy in the customer service management area, and they have got a good deal with ServiceNow. So ServiceNow is good in this manner that if you have a lot of use cases, you show a lot of roadmap, they give you good deals and good licenses in terms of some applications. So this customer in particular, they have bought a lot of CSM licenses. Plus, they do not see the actual value they are going to get out of the procurement service management module just yet, and that is why. And this is just a couple of weeks old. This discussion.
Mhm.
I also wanted to have a discussion on their roadmap and strategy. So if they have a big roadmap on PSM, SPO, which is called as
Yeah.
sourcing and procurement operations, which has S2P, which has APO. So if they have the roadmap for that, it gives them value, then let's talk about it. Let's talk to ServiceNow versus reusing CSM as that. Because again, it will give again the all the good things, technical debt, your upgradability, everything will depend if you repurpose a module. So I'm still in discussion with them, but that's how it is. So I hope, Joe, I answered your question.
Yeah, I think that was great. And if you have a follow-up question, Joe, feel free to add it into
Yeah.
the chat. Thanks
And
so
I'll just
much.
jump in a little bit. Just the
Sure.
reason for procurement is not for the processes that you could possibly implement in CSM. That procurement module comes with, really, it's the whole process of the idea is that you're going to be bringing in vendor catalogs, maintaining a large internal synced copy of the vendor catalog, have people place the orders off that, have your approval process. It kind of it's and then it is also has you get into the ability to tie in to your ERP system and manage the workflows around reviewing and approving the invoices that are coming in, automatically receiving the invoices, matching them up to your purchase orders. I mean, it's a full end-to-end purchasing system.
Yep.
So I don't think you could implement that into CSM. But if all you need is your procurement team to take a case and use that case to say, hey, I've got a purchase request and let me process it like a task. Sure. I mean, actually, you could probably implement that into ITSM using a custom task, an extension off the task table, and implement it there as well.
Definitely. And I'm seeing a trend with a lot of customers. So a couple of months back, one of my customer, we were doing sourcing and procurement for them along with an HRSD. And due to some functionalities not available in SPO, my customer, the platform owner, came to me and said, "Hey, Abhishek, we do not have fulfillment instructions in sourcing and procurement. Why can't we make another COE in HRSD and use that for procurement?" And then I had to do this whole activity again. Like, why are you wanting to repurpose an HRSD and create a new COE? And again, you are going to invest in this system. You want value out of it after 3 years or 5 years. Why do you want to do something? But again, customers are really being innovative these days, and they want us to be innovative in that. So I'm seeing a lot of trend in that area, reusing.
Well,
And procurement is the common thing in
I
that.
think that's also a very common challenge is ServiceNow's licensing model tends to drive you to use the suboptimal solution, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to use the solution that's intended for that, but let me see if I can, tweak something else to make it work the same way because, I don't want to pay the licenses. And
I have been working with a customer. I'll go back to the CSM, so when they moved on to CSM few years back, they were using some custom tool before, maybe, homegrown tool. They made our CSM look like how it was. And for that, they paid for additional app engine for CSM. They got that. They created scoped application, extended case tables. And now they have 100 plus custom tables. So I'm evaluating with them, looking at their different omni-channel experiences, how their email coming in And they don't come to ServiceNow. They come to a different system they have been using internally. How they want to sanitize it and kind of automate the email extraction. Let's say we go about Now Assist, Gen AI, those capabilities. Or if someone calls, whether they use the call center as a service like Amazon Connect, any of those capability they use, but then their call center takes a call, they manually create the cases in ServiceNow. If it comes to the portal, they use their own portal, the custom built HTML portal, and then manually someone goes and create cases in ServiceNow. So there are a lot of customers who are still evaluating. They have CSM, but they're not leveraging even the foundation of CSM. How they automate those repetitive and the manual task which they do in their day to day, which will eventually increase the productivity, efficiency, as well as the overall. When it comes to the calculating their ROI, like over a period of time, what they did, they can surely calculate in that way. So starting from that level and then integrating with other solution, going and looking at the process mining stuff, right? How they can improve their ongoing processes, how they can leverage the case summarization of the Gen AI. I got involved when they were talking about Gen AI, like, can they use Gen AI? I'm like, you are way behind, right? How can you just go and use the Gen AI just because everyone is going to use Gen AI? You have to be ready to use, like, fix your omni-channel experiences first. Give your agent more power to, help your customers, and then talk about a lot of other, we have task intelligence features like around CSM. We have the playbook. We have those workspaces. They're using none of that. So imagine they're talking about Gen AI. If they get Gen AI, maybe 2 years down, and they're like, oh, I'm not getting benefit of Gen AI, right? So these are some of the gaps and the challenges I have seen with some of the customers I'm evaluating these days. And that's one of the exciting projects getting into new year for me. I'll share more when I get, but yeah, the idea is to work with the customer, make sure that they understand what they have already got in terms of licenses, work with them to make sure that how they plan out to roll out those implementation changes, reducing the customization risk, technical debt, and then eventually, if there are any of those, let's say banking customer, then go and talk about FSO, how that can solve their problem, or can upgrade from CSM to FSO, or the telecom or the manufacturer, any of those industry workflows.
That's a ton of great information. Thank you for sharing all of it. We are less than 2 minutes away from the end of this episode. So I'd like to just do a reverse roundtable. So Himanshu, just any closing thoughts, and you got 30 seconds.
A lot of great conversation, a lot of good learning for me in terms of when there was some discussion on procurement using, a CSM, the SLAs, and then, so yeah, it was good conversation. Looking forward to more of that. So yeah, looking forward to more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your insights. I really appreciate it. Rob, love having you on this because you represent the customer side of things amongst us. And I feel that, I could always do a better job that in taking their, customer empathy or user empathy or whatever the current term is. So any closing thoughts on your side?
Yeah, I think the theme that we kept coming back to on this one was just because you can doesn't mean you should. Or as Greg said, ServiceNow gives you enough rope to hang yourself. And all of this stuff we're talking about is process first. And customers will come to you with a horrendous, complicated process and say, please automate. And yes, ServiceNow can do it, but probably the first thing to do is figure out how to make the process simpler first.
Okay, thank you. Chris.
Yeah, no, I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't use this opportunity to sales pitch New Rocket. So if you really do need a journey with CSM, we are great at doing it, and New Rocket would love to be your partner in doing that. No, in serious notes, I love working with all the products on this tool. CSM is one of the 7, I think, that I am certified in. So it's a complex product. It's not one for the faint of heart. It's definitely not one of the easier tests to go through. So no wonder Chris has been putting this off so long. It is a tough one. So when you do need help, I would suggest getting yourself an expert, finding one of these guys, or coming and finding me over at New Rocket. I mean, be sure you have somebody like that, because it's a complex product and you definitely want to do it right the first time.
So which partner are you with again?
New Rocket.
Oh, okay.
No. I mean, I should have a big sign behind me that's glowing and flashing.
Yeah, they've got those backgrounds.
You do have those backgrounds. They are available.
Yeah, that's right. The
Yep.
big purple one. So
Yep.
Greg.
I mean, going all the way back to the beginning, right? If someone says, I think we need cases, that doesn't mean that's a use case for customer service. The main reason you do customer service is you need to expose your ServiceNow instance to the entire world. If that's not your use case, then I don't think CSM is your solution. So have those discussions, make sure you're making the right decision on that front. If you take nothing else away from this, I guess take away that.
Excellent advice. And last but not least, Abhishek.
Absolutely. Whether you're doing CSM or any other application on the platform, do it right, do it out of the box, do not increase your technical debt, and have a roadmap in mind so that you get the best value of the platform you have purchased and entitled to.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the panel for again sharing your experience, your insights, and your knowledge with us. We had some great questions, and we look forward to 2025 and the next episode. So stay in touch, and thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day.
Great.